Hello and welcome to the second round of the 2014 PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. This weekend coming from Brands Hatch, which also happens to be the Mini Festival. After a particularly soggy qualifier, conditions remained tricky for the first race, which saw the return of JCW driver Chris Smith. He was in pole position for what turned out to be a really exciting race.
Well, 4 races this weekend in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, and this is how they line up. For the first of them, with in pole position Chris Smith, alongside him on the front row is Chris Knox, and then row 2, the very rapid Luke Caudle and Chris Russell. Patrick Mortimer back in 11th place ahead of Steve Cocker. Alan Taylor completes the JCW runners, and it's Shane Stoney who is the first of the Cooper class cars ahead of Matt Hammond. Grace Williams well up in 21st place just ahead of Adrian Norman. A near enough capacity grid here at the Mini Festival at Brands Hatch as we get ready for the off. First time this weekend in car with Chris Smith. Away we go. Lovely, smooth, controlled start that from Smith. He may be swamped as the field sprint towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time in car with Lawrence Davies. Around in front of him goes Kevin O'Connor. And O'Connor exits stage left as it's very slippery into Druids. Maybe a little bit of precipitation as sliding go the Chris's. Smith and Knox both sideways. Promotes Luke Caudle to lead. Chris Russell was in behind him, but he slithers wide at Graham Hill Bend. Also off is Hamish Brandon. Brandon almost finding the barriers as we go back in car with Chris Smith. As further back in the Cooper class, around goes Grace Williams, and she's been clobbered by somebody. So Josh Gollin involved. He tags Gideon Cresswell, who should recover. Quite the first lap it's been, as sprinting through to consign to the history books. It's side by side for the lead. Almost a dead heat between Luke Caudle and Chris Knox. We're in car with Caudle. There's Knox to the outside, and he assumes the advantage. Immediately moves to the right to cover the line into Druids. Luke Caudle looks to the outside as Chris Smith and Lawrence Davey pretty much share third position. Down out of Druids they come once more into the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend, and Chris Knox trying to sprint clear as one of the stars doing to park. Simon Quinn also looks to join in the battle for the lead. Meanwhile, at the head of the Cooper class, it is Matt Hammond who leads the way from the red car of Shane Stoney as Ricky Page takes third at Druids. Back in car with Pete Diamond, and around he goes, and he's going to end up in the gravel trap there. Slithers to a halt. His dismay evident to see as Shane Stoney doesn't downshift into clearways. I wonder if he's got a little bit of a gearbox issue here, because as we accelerate onto the Bramham straight now, he's in the slipstream behind Matt Hammond. Only now, quite late, does he make the shift. So I just wonder whether he's lost one or two of the lower gears. The Cooper class cars swarming through. We go back in car with Simon Quinn. You can see the train for the lead in front, and it's a train which Simon Quinn departs. Around he goes at Graham Hill Bend, all arms and elbows, and perpendicular to the oncoming traffic. He looks to recover and does very quickly. Well, as ever in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, it's 2 races in 1, and this is the Cooper class race headed by Matt Hammond from Shane Stoney. Although Ricky Page moves up into 2nd place in the Cooper class. He now takes his turn to chase the white and green machine of Matt Hammond, who sprints along the Cooper straight into Surtees. Ricky Page and Shane Stoney both using the slipstream. Right, let's see what Stoney does. Next to Surtees. Doesn't downshift. He's definitely got a problem there, Shane Stoney, and he holds the car in gear as he somewhat nonchalantly, one-handedly makes it around clearways. Shane Stoney making it look, of course, a lot easier than it actually is. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, a change for third as Lawrence Davey squeezes past Chris Smith, and already the JCW class cars beginning to get in amongst some of the Cooper class traffic. Luke Caudle moves up a gear in pursuit of Chris Knox, who catches the traffic at the worst possible moment into Surtees. He'll look to dart through into clearways as Simon Quinn continues his recovery effort. Steve Cocker, he's just moving to the inside of. He's looking back from Luke Caudle. Lawrence Davey is in very close attention. Now that Caudle has fought his way through to the front of the pack. Will he be able to maintain his lead? Lawrence Davey, former Legends racer, very, very good at slipstreaming and pack racing here on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. Oh, and sideways moment there from Chris Knox. Now this is Caudle's opportunity to demote Knox. They sprint into Surtees. That's going to be very, very tight. Caudle just gives him racing room. We look back from Caudle. There's Lawrence Davey. Now where is Chris Knox? He's been hung out to dry into clearways. Slots into the line in third position. Accelerating onto the Bradman straight. And Lawrence Davey settles in to the toe behind Luke Caudle as further back they fan out almost 3 wide is the dispute for third place as Steve Crocker's race comes to an end against the tyre wall at Druids. Not a wizard performance. Back to the lead of the Cooper class, and it's still Matt Hammond from Shane Stoney and Ricky Page. A little bit of a motivational pep slap on the helmet for Ricky Page as he turns into Surtees, as Shane Stoney continues to have these gear selection issues. It's not really hurting his pace whatsoever, except to say maybe he'd just be able to pull a little bit more traction out of clearways, and that would give him a better opportunity to challenge Matt Hammond along the Bradman Straight and into Paddock Hill Bend. Right into the braking zone for Paddock now. Shane Stoney breaks it possibly late, down through the gears. Absolutely brilliant manoeuvre that from Shane Stoney. Can he make it stick though, because he'll really needs another gear climbing up towards Druids. But Matt Hammond has to back off because of the recovery of Steve Cocker's car. That means he can't challenge Shane Stoney. Stoney, if anything, builds a very slight buffer at the head of the Cooper class. So it's now the turn of Ricky Page to challenge back to the lead of the JCW class and the race overall. Luke Caudle and Lawrence Davey through the traffic have just begun to make a little bit of a bid for freedom as Davey gives Caudle some assistance out of Graham Hill Bend, maybe giving a little bit more assistance into Surtees. Indeed he does, and they are in amongst the battle here for the lead of the Cooper class, and therefore Ricky Page and Matt Hammond do not want Luke Caudle diving between the pair of them, which is exactly what happens. They're going to head onto the Bradman Straight now, as there is Luke Caudle. Lawrence Davey shoots past Ricky Page, and Ricky once more, maybe spending a little bit less time on the hand gestures might improve your pace, as Luke Caudle now moves ahead of Shane Stoney. A little bit of steam coming from the tail of Caudle's car as Lawrence Davey once more gets back onto terms. Then we've got the black car looming large in third place. That is Chris Smith. 2 wheels through Graham Hill Bend for the leading gaggle of cars as Neil Newstead slithers out wide as he puts that lap on Matt Hammond in car with Simon Quinn. As he darts the inside Gideon Cresswell and is able to put the lap on Cresswell. Cresswell also sliding past one of the other Cooper class cars. The leading trio have all closed up, and there's Caudle defence from Davey. This is the opportunity for Chris Smith. Here he comes around the outside in the Matt Black machine. He fails to get ahead of Luke Caudle. He may just get ahead of Lawrence Davey, and that is brilliant driving from the pair of them. Very, very clean, and that really is what the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge is all about. Close, clean, but ultra competitive racing. Into Surtees, and Davey, dancing on the limits of adhesion, repasses Chris Smith as further back Chris Russell elbows Josh Gold on the side as he tries to put a little bit of ground on the cars around him. Getting quite late into the race now as once more Chris Smith looks to challenge Lawrence Davey, who squeezes Chris Smith towards the grass. Smith's got the inside line for the hairpin and moves through into second position. Chris Knox may follow through past Davey into third. This has been an absolutely scintillating race. All of this squabbling for second has given Luke Caudle the opportunity to possibly make the decisive break at the head of the pack. Meanwhile, in the battle for Cooper class on, Shane Stoney is being rapidly reeled in by Ricky Page, who this time keeps his hands firmly on the steering wheel as Luke Caudle accelerates through to the checkered flag. A super performance from Caudle, and he takes the win with Chris Smith in second and Lawrence Davey just by a tenth of a second, edging out Chris Knox for third. Delight for Luke Caudle as Shane Stoney claims Cooper class honours from Ricky Page. Let's have a look then at the results, with victory for Luke Caudle from Chris Smith and Lawrence Davey, a fine 4th for Chris Knox ahead of Neil Newstead, and the recovering Simon Quinn, an excellent 7th for Patrick Mortimer. In the Cooper class, Shane Stoney, victorious from Ricky Page, and Matt Hammond completes the rostrum ahead of Josh Gollin and Gideon Cresswell. Well, only a quarter of the weekend's work is done, but it is time, nonetheless, to celebrate on the legendary Brands Hatch Grand Prix rostrum, first of all for the drivers in the Cooper class, who enjoy the spoils of victory, and then for Luke Caudle, victorious in the JCW class, as he receives the handshakes and the trophies.
A face that I didn't expect to be seeing here at Brands Hatch, Chris Smith. What are you doing here? You're racing again.
Yeah, just back for the weekend. We're always going to try and do one race this season, and Brands Hatch seems a good one to do. It's fun here, there's 4 races, and there's a good crowd because we're at the mini festival. Didn't get a bad start, but lost it at Druids. Ended up back down to 3rd or 4th, I think, then managed to get back up to 2nd a couple of laps before the end.
Were the conditions still pretty tricky as well? They looked it.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was dry. It was dry throughout. The setup wasn't great on the car, but we managed to have to drive around it, and was happy with the podium first time back out. It's such a great feeling to get back out and race the mini. It puts a smile on your face, so there's nothing not to like.
Fairly tricky conditions in the first outing, certainly made for some exciting racing. We'll be back on the grid for more PowerMaxed Mini Challenge action after the break. After that exciting 5-car JCW battle in the first race, the second grid of the weekend sees Luke Caudle on pole, joined up front by Chris Smith and Lawrence Davey. Shane Stoney resumes pole in the Cooper class. The engines are revving behind me, so let's go racing.
Well, this should be very entertaining. Here is how they line up then, with in pole position Luke Caudle ahead of Chris Smith. Row 2, Lawrence Davey and Chris Knox. Row 3, Neil Newstead and Simon Quinn will be hoping for a rotation 3 outing this time round. Shane Stoney once more starts from pole in the Cooper class, ahead of Ricky Page, Matt Hammond and Gideon Cresswell. Once more though, a near capacity grid as we have a look back at the warm-up lap, and Simon Quinn, he's all arms and elbows. Will he save it? Well, Alain Prost did it at Imola back in 1991. Not that's any consolation. So Quinn, a retiree before the race starts. Everybody else, though, all present and correct. As away we go. And it's a good start from Luke Caudle. Also well away from the back of the JGW runners is Kevin O'Connor, as they charge towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. It's Caudle from Knox, and then Chris Smith. We look back from Luke Caudle at Chris Knox, who finds some space to the inside of Luke Caudle, and he may just squeeze through here, you know, as the rest of the pack climb the hill towards Druids, and that angle really gives an indication of just how steep it is. So Knox through into the lead, down into the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Already Chris Knox busy defending from Luke Caudle. There's behind drama and into the barrier. That is Chris Stoney, I believe, and Shane Stoney also has an incident on the first lap that didn't appear to be of his making. It was across the grass, bodywork flying. Chris Knox, he's pushing very hard on cold tyres as Chris Stoney fortunately walks away. That was a heavy impact. Back to the race leader, Chris Knox. He has got Luke Caudle. Then a slight gap back to Chris Smith and a fast starting Hamish Brandon. We get on to Neil Newstead, right blue car, Lawrence Davey up to Druids. Now don't forget, we've got the car of Chris Stoney on the exit. There it is. I suspect we may well be seeing a safety car here, because that car is in a very exposed position. As ever, the Cooper class runners in the thick of the action early on, and yes, a waved yellow flag the back of your shot. The instant unit on track could only mean that the safety car is out for the recovery of Chris Stoney's car. So the field cooling down. Let's have another look at it, and Stoney really just squeezed to the outside and absolutely nothing he could do. It was William Phillips who made the decisive contact. They do build these cars strong in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, and Chris Stoney walks away. Shane Stoney also, through no fault of his own, he gets tipped sideways, and Ricky Page has nowhere to go but the grass. As ever, the Brands Hatch Marshals doing a formidable job. So we're about to go racing once more here at Brands Hatch at the Mini Festival, and it's Chris Knox who leads them through into Paddock Hill Bend. Then it's Caudle, Smith and Brandon. It's still looking a little bit treacherous, isn't it? The drivers just hunting for the grip as their friendly tyres cool down behind the safety car. Through Druids they go. Just squeeze the outside there. Neil Newsted, but he might be able to withstand the pressure of Lawrence Davey. Indeed he does. Although Davey, left with nowhere to go, runs across the grass, loses out as well to Kevin O'Connor and possibly one or two others to follow through. The leading group of cars through Surtees on towards Clearways, and Chris Knox just trying to make good his escape from Luke Cordell and Chris Smith. But Cordell, we know, is a driver who can drive across the gap here, because in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, as with the Old Star Minis, slipstream is king, and no more so here than at Brands Hatch on the Indy Circuit, where you follow in the tow along the gravel straight and then do what you dare through Paddock Hill Bend before climbing uphill now into the right-hand hairpin at Druids. The leading quintet, because Neil Newsted has joined them there or thereabouts. Meanwhile, back to the Cooper class, it's Gideon Cresswell who is ahead of the queue, although I think Matt Hammond's escaped from it. And then we've got William Phillips, who's next along. Yes, there's Matt Hammond, who's got a nice advantage over Gideon Cresswell. Shane Stoney recovering. He's in the middle of this squabble. He's looking to try and race himself past Simon Walton. Through Druids. He's going to have the inside line, though, for Graham Hill Bend. William Phillips and Gideon Cresswell, meanwhile, doing battle. Phillips in the slipstream behind Cresswell as they sprint along towards Surtees. All the while, though, they have got the car of Matt Hammond that they're chasing down. Returning to the battle for JCW honours, and it's Chris Knox who remains at the fore, but Luke Cordell, you can see, 10th by 10, black on black, is closing the gap back down. Well, Steve Cocker, once more, unfortunately in and amongst the wars after the retirement in the first race of the weekend. He's got damage trailing, and therefore he's being chased down by the Cooper class leader, Matt Hammond. Now this isn't what Matt Hammond would have wanted, because when you're out front, sometimes you just want a clear track. You don't want the distraction of a JCW class car, which is going to be, by dint of its damage, slower through the corners and then quicker on the straights. I just wonder if that's providing a little bit of distraction for Hammond. That coupled with the slipstream effect means that Gideon Cresswell, with William Phillips pushing along, coming to join in the party. Then it's a gap back to Shane Stoney. William Phillips having a dramatic race already. He's now in with a good shout of being on the podium. Already for the first time this year, Shane Stoney is at risk of not being on the rostrum. He's a long way back now in this battle for third, and the beauty of slipstreaming in minis is that when you're running together, you can begin to pull a gap. The difficulty is if you're like Shane Stoney and out on your own, you can see the group of cars in front as they work, just beginning to ease off into the distance, and that is going to be Stoney's concern. Backing car Neil Newsted behind Hamish Brandon. This the fight for 4th and 5th position. The red car of Hamish Brandon sweeps into Clearways, hooks the wheel over the curb, bounces up onto 3 wheels. What can Neil Newsted and the black and green machine do? Using the slipstream along the Bramham Straight, past the pit boards, being hung out, and then into the braking zone for Paddock Hill Bend. Newsted contemplates a dart to the inside, realises there's not quite enough space. As all the while, 2011 champion Chris Knox leading the way from Luke Cordell. Neil Newsted now decides maybe he can make the move for 4th, and Hamish Brandon was late to cover that line. Finally, Brandon covers it. Meanwhile, back to the Cooper class, and it's a brilliant 3-way scrap as the lead changes. Gideon Cresswell darting to the inside line into Paddock Hill Bend. Wasn't an awful lot Matt Hammond could do about it. Instead, Hammond looks to fight back into Druids. Half a car's width, no more than that, and therefore Hammond can't squeeze through. Instead, he's at real risk here of being demoted by William Phillips, who looks to one side then the other through Graham Hill Bend onto the very short sprint along Cooper Straight. Now we're getting to that phase of the race where the leaders of the race overall in the JCW class are going to start catching the Cooper class front runners as they go either side of a back marker. The battle for 4th is going to change. Neil Newsted has the line for Druids, and there is nothing that Hamish Brandon can do about that. To Graham Hill Bend though, it's Brandon who takes his turn to follow Neil Newsted. That was alert driving from Newsted as we go side by side in the battle for the lead in the Cooper class, almost swapping wing mirrors then, William Phillips and Gideon Cresswell. And all these drivers, they are so well versed in the performance of their machinery. They really know Suddenly the limits. Ricky Page charges through Paddock Hill Bend. He's got this battle for the top 3 positions. Looming large in his tail. We're in car with Luke Cordell in second place. Looking back at Chris Smith, number 100 in third. Change of livery for Smith this season because going back for the past few years he's always raced in the black and orange car. This time he's all black as they dart to the inside of Shane Stoney, Timon Stoney. Although Chris Smith gets hung out to dry, he can't squeeze past Stoney, and that releases Luke Cordell now to really put the pressure onto Chris Knox. They've got the Gideon Cresswell, William Phillips battle just ahead of them. Matt Hammond moves smartly aside. And it's something that's always emphasised in the driver's briefing in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge is for the Cooper class drivers, don't try and interrupt the battle from the JCW runners, just stick to your line or move out of the way where it's safe to do so. They'll find a way around you, and it means that we very rarely see races interrupted by lappery, as has been the case here. The leading trio are as close as they were before they encountered those cars. Though Luke Cordell, who's ruthless through traffic, is taking the opportunity to get another car length closer as Joe Polly gets it all wrong. Exiting Paddock Hill Bend and bang into the tyre wall. And that's a big accident for Polly. And Matt Hammond doing something not dissimilar a few moments before that. As sprinting to the checkered flag, Chris Knox just takes the win from Luke Cordell, who edges out Chris Smith by 35 thousandths of a second. Neil Newstead home in 4th, and it is Gideon Cresswell who takes victory in the Cooper class after a fine, spirited performance. So the drivers acknowledging the applause of the crowd. We'll take a look at the results, with victory for Knox, second place for Luke Cordell. Chris Smith completes the podium ahead of Neil Newstead and Hamish Brandon, with Lawrence Davey a comparatively muted 6th ahead of Chris Russell. Into the Cooper class, Gideon Cresswell victorious ahead of Matt Hammond and William Phillips. Shane Stoney in 4th from the recovering Ricky Page.
So that new car's doing very well for you, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit now. This is my 3rd visit to the podium, so I've had a 3rd, a 2nd and a 1st now, so I'm really happy, yeah.
That win was for the Accelerate team. The guys, obviously, they've worked really hard, Steve, Danny, Andy and the boys. But yeah, the shop play car, we've got Rivervale Leasing on board this weekend, SL Group Management, and I got my head down from the start, got the lead into Druids, and had a bit of a moment on lap 1 which lost the front splitter, so the car was a bit of a handful, but hopefully I think we bagged fastest lap as well.
Shane, things seem to go wrong very early on for you in that race.
Yeah, we just got really unlucky. JCW got into a bit of a slide, and I had nowhere to go. I hit the JCW, then Ricky behind me had nowhere to go either, so he hit the side of me. We were both pretty lucky not to sort of end up in the Armco on the outside and inside. So, you know, to even finish the race was probably an achievement.
Since the podium, we've learnt that car number 17, William Phillips, has been excluded from the results. That means that Matt Hammond moves up to 2nd place and Shane Stoney secures 3rd. Can he improve on that? We'll find out in race 3 after the break. Welcome back to the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge from Brands Hatch, where it happens to be Mini Festival weekend as well. Now, one of the really popular features of that is the public grid walk, and as you can see, it's absolutely packed here this weekend, despite the weather not being particularly nice, but it's brought a lot of people out.
Yeah, it's great. It's what it's about, and it brings the public into the whole motor racing scene. Because how many kids, especially, never get a chance to even walk on the track.
Yeah.
And you can see with Brands, there's quite a camber on this track.
Yes, there
which
is.
You don't realise. You think it's all flat, but there's a heck of a camber on this.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's awesome.
It's very fun looking at all the cars.
Got Lawrence Davey signing an autograph at the moment. Look at that. Good stuff. I don't know if you can see through the front windscreen there, but that's not Hamish Brandon in the seat. Distinctly looks like a panda bear to me. We have got over here, this is Chris Knox's car, obviously. There we go, helmet on top. Before you get in the car, I've got to ask, why did you have a bear in your seat?
Well, for a start, he's better looking than me, and he's everybody seems to want to give him a cuddle, which I'm feeling a bit left out about now, but never mind. But no, it's just all in the Panda theme, so Panda racing parts and accessories, and I thought, well, we'll have a bit of fun with it and hopefully put a smile on some kids' faces, so they seem to love it. Just made it a bit more appealing to have their picture taken with it and things like that, so it was just a bit of fun.
There's our lovely grid girls. Very, very popular, obviously, with the public. Lots of photographs being taken. And finally, the last car, the one with all the trophies on top, is, of course, that of Luke Caudle. Look at all that, a stash of trophies. The grid has now been cleared, which means that race 3 of the weekend can get underway. The engines are now revving. There you go, the car of Chris Knox, who of course is in pole position for this one. It is a rolling start, so without further ado, let's go racing.
The rolling start always adds an extra dimension. It's a different discipline for the drivers, gives us plenty of excitement into Paddock Hill Bend. This then is how they line up, with in pole position Chris Knox ahead of Luke Caudle, then Chris Smith and Neil Newstead, with Hamish Brandon and Lawrence Davey sharing row 3. Steve Cocker completes the top 10. Gideon Cresswell heads the Cooper class runners from Matt Hammond, and then Shane Stoney and Ricky Page, Adrian Norman well up in 5th. Cars formed up Noah's Ark style, 2 by 2, coming through clearways and onto Ram Straight, getting ready for the signal at the top of the gantry. When the red lights change, they will be going racing here at Brands Hatch, the 3rd time this weekend at the Mini Festival in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. And away we go as the pack sprint towards Paddock Hill Bend. Of course, the 2 classes, the JCW cars and the Cooper class, really 2 races in one, as the JCW cars surge through the first corner. It's Chris Knox who's got the early advantage from Chris Smith, Luke Caudle and Neil Newstead. We are in car with Lawrence Davey as he doesn't quite tap Neil Newstead, who slides sideways of his own volition as Caudle sneaks into 2nd. Lawrence Davey does much the same for 4th as the head of the pack head down out of Druids. Luke Caudle and Chris Smith continue to dispute 2nd place. Caudle's got the inside line for clearways. You suspect, therefore, he will hold on. Indeed he does. The man to watch, though, is the blue car, Lawrence Davey. It's been a brilliant first lap for Davey, as behind the Cooper class runners all jostling for position in the early stages. Into Paddock Hill Bend, meanwhile, Chris Knox leading the way from Luke Caudle, who gets onto 2 wheels through Paddock, and that's destabilised the car. He snaps across to the left and into the tyre wall, and that's a nasty incident from Luke Caudle. Barrier 1, Luke nil, unfortunately, and struggling to think of the last time we saw an error like that from Luke Caudle. Very uncharacteristic, just pushing a little bit too hard. What it means, though, is Lawrence Davey is promoted into 2nd place, with Chris Smith down to 30 attempts to squeeze through into 2nd. Lawrence Davey, robust but fair in his defence. And this is very good news for the race leader Chris Knox, because it gives him the opportunity to try and make good his escape as they sprint along the gravel straight through the completion of another lap. Chris Russell there, he is in 5th, chasing down 4th place man Neil Newstead. Meanwhile, the Cooper class looks very busy. Ricky Page it is, who is in 3rd place, because they're chasing down Gideon Cresswell and Josh Gollin. There are the pair of them. And then we've got this gap back to the squabble for 3rd. Ricky Page leading the charge of the Cooper Brigade into Paddock Hill Bend. In car with Shane Stoney. He's so smooth, he makes it look so easy, Shane Stoney, and he's racing absolutely flat out, but he's very relaxed with the gear changes, very relaxed with the turns of the wheel, and that's really what you need to do to make these Cooper cars run successfully out of Graham Hill Bend. Ricky Page sprints along the Cooper straight with Shane Stoney in pursuit. Meanwhile, at the front of the pack, Chris Knox has been comprehensively caught by Lawrence Davey. Davey didn't want to do that all alone, so Chris Smith has joined him to keep him company. As now Davey looks to challenge for the lead, and he's got the inside line up the hill towards Druids. Chris Knox, though, just moves across in time. You can see just how hard Lawrence Davey, though, is trying to move to the head of the field. Pretty much throw a blanket over this leading trio as out of Graham Hill Bend, the Cooper straight on towards Surtees. They're already encountering a little bit of traffic. It's Pete Diamond who they'll be coming up to next, and Pete moves aside. Very nice stuff that, doesn't intrude on battle for the lead whatsoever. Chris Knox maintaining the most slender of advantages as they head along the Bramble Straight, past the teams on the pit wall, all encouraging them on as Knox parks the car on the end of the road. Smart stuff that from Chris Knox. He's going to make Lawrence Davey do this the hard way and try and drive around him. About coming out of Paddock Hill Bend immediately, Knox covers the inside line. Davey looks to the outside, then moves back in behind Knox. Thus, Chris Smith can't squeeze through. As around Druids and down towards Graham Hill Bend, this leading trio. Got to be careful though, because if they battle too intently, that is going to bring Neil Newstead and Chris Russell into this scrap for the podium places. Meanwhile, Gideon Cresswell has been caught by both Ricky Page and Shane Stoney, and Cresswell goes sideways. Josh Gollin's also been overhauled, and therefore Ricky Page looks to move into the lead of the Cooper class. He does just that with assistance from Shane Stoney, who can't then go through himself because we've got recovery of a car up at Druid. So instead, the leading quartet turning through Graham Hill Bend. It gives Gideon Cresswell the opportunity to gather his thoughts and start to challenge, but he runs wide across the grass. That possibly gives a little bit of an opening for Shane Stoney to think about challenging, and he does just that into clearways, but Cresswell moving across, covering the racing line as they accelerate along and complete another lap. And this really the only moment of respite on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, unless you're scrapping for the lead. They're almost 3 wide into Paddock Hill Bend. Stoney looking every which way, can't find a way through, except that Cresswell breaks a little bit too deeply. He slithers wide, and they've got the Chris Knox Lawrence Davey battle coming through as Gideon Cresswell gets tipped into a spin. Around he goes, and he will have to try and dig himself out of the gravel trap at Druids. And that was the case of trying to squeeze 6 minis into space that's really only large enough for 4 of them. Meanwhile, it's enabled Chris Knox and Lawrence Davey to clear the Cooper class lead battle. It's also enabled Shane Stoney to jump into the lead of the Cooper class, and we are getting towards the latter stages of the race. Lawrence Davey is going to win this one. He's going to have to do something fairly spectacular, and he's going to have to do it very, very soon, because accelerating along the Bramble Straight is Chris Knox. Another lap is reeled off. Davey once more looks to the high, wide, handsome line of Paddock Hill Bend. Might be all of those 3, but it's not the line that's going to give him the lead of the race. Chris Knox, nonetheless, preemptively covers the inside line into Druids. As Matt Hammond chases Adrian Norman in the Team Sky Electrics car. Ian Cresswell has recovered to be just ahead of this battle. We've also got Kevin O'Connor, who is trying to pick his way through. This is one of the JCW class cars. As Chris Knox has now, with a little bit more traffic, been able to build enough of a buffer over Lawrence Davey to allow him to enjoy this one. It's going to be victory for Chris Knox. Second place, Lawrence Davey, just ahead of Chris Smith, who has been remarkably consistent this weekend. And once more, a fine race. In the Cooper class, it is going to, almost certainly going to be the win for Shane Stoney. Ricky Page, though, his ever-present shadow, but he couldn't quite do enough. So Stoney victorious, with Ricky Page in second place, and third place going the way of William Phillips. Let's have a look then at the final classification, with the win for Chris Knox ahead of Lawrence Davey, Chris Smith and Neil Newstead, with Chris Russell completing the top 5. In the Cooper class, Shane Stoney the winner from Ricky Page, William Phillips, Josh Gollin. Gideon Cresswell recovers to 5th after that huge scare he had into Druids. So another bottle of bubbly and more trophies for Shane Stoney. It has been a remarkably good first couple of rounds of the season for him thus far. Puts him to the 4 of the Cooper class standings, and the same for Chris Knox. Thumbs up as he celebrates on top of the Brands Hatch rostrum, but they've still got one race to go.
Just managed to time it right to get the pair of them in Exeter paddock. So, you know, to get that, get the win after, especially after the damage we got in race 2. So, you know, really pleased. Got to say huge thank you to Coastal. You know, the car was was fantastic. Then it doesn't look too great, but it's certainly quick. So thanks to them.
That was one of the most difficult races I've ever had. The Rivervale Leeson Mini wasn't quite as on the pace as we were in the first race. So I think Lawrence had about 0.4 of a second on me. So we got away well. He launched reeled me in really quickly. Had to defend pretty much from the get-go.
He did it. Shane Stoney back on the podium for the Cooper class, and Chris Knox notching up another win in the JCWs. It's not over yet. There's still one more race to come this weekend, so join us back at Brands Hatch after the break. Winning the overall championship isn't the only prize up for grabs in Mini Challenge. There's also the coveted Best of British Awards. One of the sponsors of that is DNA Tuning, and from DNA Tuning I've got John with me now. You're heavily involved in Mini Challenge anyway. Just tell us a little bit about what the company does. What do you do?
We offer a standardised map for the series to bring the cars closer together so they can actually race a lot closer, and also look after the diagnostics throughout the grid and any issues any of the teams might have.
Yeah.
We tune the cars at the start of the season, then throughout the season we're constantly monitoring all the cars, try and keep it as level as we can.
And finally, why is it so important to be part of the Best of British Award?
Well, obviously with the £15,000 prize, it's a really good opportunity for the drivers, and it gives us a chance to help a driver move on into the formats.
It's a reverse of the top 7 for this grid, which means the slower cars are brought forward. That means that in pole position for the Cooper class is Simon Walton, and for the JCWs it is Mr. Patrick Mortimer. For the last time this weekend, let's go racing.
So it's Patrick the Raymeister Mortimer who lines up in pole position on, unfortunately for him, an all-dry grid. He shares the front row with Henry Dupree. Row 2 is Chris Russell and Neil Newstead ahead of Chris Smith and Lawrence Davey, with Chris Knox starting in 7th. Simon Walton then takes pole in the Cooper class alongside the very rapid Matt Hammond, and then it's Gideon Cresswell and Josh Gollin. We are surely set for a fine finale here to the Mini Festival, and the fourth and final race of the weekend. The PowerMaxed Mini Challenge gets underway. The pack sprint towards Paddock Hill Bend. Once more in car Lawrence Davey up behind Neil Newstead, and contact is made. Davey slithers sideways as the rest of them all just about squeezing through. Not too much drama as it is Chris Russell who leads the way up the hill towards Druids for the first time. Josh Gollin and Matt Hammond sharing the lead in the Cooper class. Henry Dupree has slipped down to 3rd. He's got Lawrence Davey to the inside. Very, very close between the pair of them as Davey then runs out over the rumble strip. That means that he is passed by Chris Knox. In the lead of the race though, Chris Russell and Neil Newstead trying to make their escape. Oh, but Newstead spins the car around and is stranded in the middle of the track, just avoided by those around him. And Neil Newstead recovers a long, long way down the packers. Lawrence Davey darts into the pit lane. And all weekend the driver's been caught out a little bit by the fact that it is very cold here at Brands Hatch. Don't be deceived by the sunny weather. The track temperature really quite low. Therefore, we've seen the drivers taking rather more laps than they anticipated to get their Pirelli tyres up to temperature. Chris Smith, meanwhile, putting the pressure on to Patrick Mortimer. That is for 5th position. Hamish Brandon just ahead of them. And then Chris Knox with Henry Dupree around Graham Hill Bend on the Cooper Straight. This is a good start to the race though for Chris Russell. He has got a nice 10 or so car length advantage over Henry Dupree. And what he would really like here is Dupree to hold off the efforts of Chris Knox, but Dupree runs a little bit wide through clearways, and that is a gilt-edged opportunity for Chris Knox as Dupree then covers across quite late in the day to chop across Knox's bows. That means that Chris will have to think about where he's going to challenge, and the answer is up the inside into Paddock Hill Bend, loops over the curb onto 2 wheels momentarily, and he now sets off in pursuit of Chris Russell. Let's see if Henry Dupree though can maintain that 3rd place. He's got Hamish Brandon and Chris Smith setting about chasing him down. Meanwhile, Lawrence Davey out of the pits, and he's right in the mix for the lead in the Cooper class as Josh Gollin darts to the inside of William Phillips. They've also got Gideon Cresswell and Matt Hammond as part of this leading quartet in the Cooper class. Been a fantastic weekend this from William Phillips, the driver. There he is in the white and black machine. he's really been mixing it in amongst the front runners in the Cooper class. Will he end the weekend with a victory? Well, at the moment he's got Josh Gollin to overhaul, but again Gollin leaves a car's width to the inside into clearways, and that is all the invitation that William Phillips needs as they then accelerate out of clearways through Clark Curve onto round straight. Now Gideon Cresswell in the silver and black car is well positioned here. He can take the double slipstream instead. He makes it 3-1 into Paddock Hill Bend, and they're squeezing themselves, and Cresswell gets fired off into the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Bend, and he was trying to squeeze Josh Gollin. There was nowhere for Gollin to go. Cresswell should recover. I don't think he's going to remain in the beach, but any hopes of a podium finish have all but disappeared. William Phillips and Josh Gollin continue as if nothing happened. They've been joined by Matt Hammond and Shane Stoney, just in case they're a little bit lonely, as Phillips now jinks through, takes the lead into Surtees. The key is, can he get the car stopped, squared off around clearways with enough momentum to maintain the lead into Paddock Hill Bend. Well, he had a little bobble through clearways, and that is going to give Gollin the opportunity to follow in his slipstream, take advantage of the tow. Four of them as one, hugging the pit wall, then crest into the braking zone for Paddock Hill Bend before the road just plummets away to the right hand side. No change in that leading group, but they're as close as you like, probably 5 car lengths covering the 4 cars, as Shane Stoney looks to challenge Matt Hammond to the inside into Druids and just about squeezes through. It's a nice move there from Shane Stoney. Ricky Page now making it a 5-way scrap in the Cooper class as he looks to follow in pursuit as well as around Graham Hill Bend and along the Cooper Straight. William Phillips leading this queue, and if Phillips is able to break clear, that will be a remarkable performance, because it's often said in the mini challenge, in a group like this, the last place you want to be going to the final lap is first, because it leaves you vulnerable to attack from all sides. Phillips instead is setting about just trying to ease clear, 10th of a second upon 10th of a second, lap upon lap. Looking to the inside line and riding the curb, gaining the place. Josh Gollin just ahead of Shane Stoney, while Chris Russell has been passed by Chris Knox ahead of the field. Russell though staying with Knox, and then it's Chris Smith who's moved up into 3rd place ahead of Henry Dupree and Hamish Brandon. They've got Luke Cordell, who else, closing on their tail, and Cordell looking to make amends for that uncharacteristic error that saw him pitched out of the penultimate race of the weekend. Well, William Phillips has absolutely checked out here, which is exactly what he wants to do. We've still got these 4 cars fighting hammer and tongs for 2nd position in the Cooper class, and they're about to be swamped by the battle for the lead of the race overall. It's going to be quite hard for Chris Knox to find a way through this lot if they're 3 wide into Paddock Hill Bend. I don't think it's going to be a concern this time around for Knox, but certainly on the next occasion he can find himself very much in the thick of the action. So they all swoop downhill. There's just a little bit sideways possibly there from Josh Gollin. Gives Ricky Page the opportunity to roar alongside as they come up out of Paddock Hill Bend into Druids, out over the curbs from Ricky Page. And now here comes Chris Knox, who jinks the inside of Matt Hammond. That's one of the Cooper class cars disposed of. The other 3 are making that impossible target almost 3 wide into Surtees, and Chris Knox doesn't know where to go. It's going to give Chris Russell a golden chance to possibly challenge for the lead of the race. At the same time, if Russell goes for a move over Cooks, he's going to end up skittling a good number of Cooper class runners. Now Knox sees the opening to the inside along the Brown Straight, but he's not been seen by Josh Gollin. Now he has. So Knox and Russell dart through to the inside. Lawrence Davies, recovery drive continuing as he is able to successfully squeeze his way past Patrick Mortimer, as Chris Knox has been finally in the late stage of the race able to shake off Chris Russell. There's Russell, he's about 2 seconds back, but that is going to be a near impossible task to make up, because through clearways for the final time to cap what has been an emphatic weekend here at the Mini Festival for Chris Knox. He accelerates through to take yet another victory in the 2014 PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. So it's Knox for the win, with Russell in 2nd place and Chris Smith through to complete the podium. In the Cooper class, William Phillips crowns a weekend of feisty and fast performances with a win, and he is absolutely overjoyed with that. receiving the applause of the crowd as he finished ahead of the group behind. So Chris Knox taking the win from Chris Russell and Chris Smith. Helps me call Chris to be on the podium. Luke Cordell up to 4th. In the Cooper class, it was William Phillips who won it from Ricky Page and Josh Gollin. Shane Stoney rather shuffled out of that group to finish down in 6th place. Well, the models on to the rostrum. It's time for the drivers to savour the glamour of the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge and the Mini Festival. The final trip to the podium in the 2014 running of the Mini Festival, and therefore the opportunity to let rip with the champagne. William Phillips and Chris Knox celebrating on the top step of the podium. The pair of them have had a very fine weekend's racing. So as the grid girls make their escape, it's time to celebrate for the final time.
It's been such an up and down weekend. I mean, we've struggled on power through testing and Saturday, and then getting second but having it taken off of me. It's been an up and down weekend, and a lovable one at that. I'm just so happy that I've shown myself as a driver, and I've got up to where every driver wants to be first.
Yeah, some fantastic racing. I've had a particularly good weekend racing Mr. Stoney. Some great overtaking, all clean racing. Fantastic. Couldn't ask for much more. Apart a standard chairlift would be nice, but that's my only complaint.
I got a reasonable start, made up a few places, and a bit of luck coming out of Graham Hill Bend sort of gave me a couple of positions, but again, I sort of catching the other Chris, and he made it quite easy for me to overtake.
I'm not one of the quickest drivers out there. I don't have a lot of race experience, so the reverse grid helps me because I start front, and if I can start at the front, I can stay out at the front. I'm not so great at overtaking, so yeah, the reverse grid helps quite a lot today. It's good fun.
Yeah.
So championship standings, and it's Chris Knox who leads the way amongst the JCW runners from Luke Cordell and Lawrence Davey in 3rd. Very tight battle though for the championship forming. In the Cooper class, Shane Stoney has pulled a healthy advantage over Josh Gollin, who is just 1 point clear of Ricky Page, with Gideon Cresswell on his tail.
Congratulations to our Sunoco drivers of the day. For the JCWs, it is Chris Knox, and for the Cooper class, it is William Phillips. It has certainly been a full and fantastic weekend of racing here at Brands Hatch. Plenty of fast and furious battles, which is what we love about this championship. There's going to be another mini festival a little bit later on in the season, but before that, the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge rolls into Snetterton, so I hope you can join us for that. In the meantime, remember, you can find out more, get involved, keep up to date with what's going on our Facebook page and Twitter. But for now, from Brands Hatch, it's goodbye.